Topic for this presentation is taxes and how they create deadweight loss. Much like the ball shown in this figure, the economy is carefully balanced in equilibrium, normally speaking. Supply and demand are perfectly balanced through prices and other economic signals. These signals and equilibriums are very delicate and work to ensure that the economy functions at a maximum level of output. However, there are certain things such as taxes that can disrupt these natural equilibriums and thus create some serious damage in the level of economic output. While most people think of taxes as merely a transfer payment from consumers and businesses to the government, they do more than just transfer money. Taxes on top of transferring money lower the total level of trades that can occur in the economy and thus lower the total level of economic output, which in turn makes all parties worse off. To show some of the effects that taxes have and how they can create deadweight loss, I want to first examine a graph of a market equilibrium, discuss some of its characteristics, and then compare that graph to the graph of a market that's being taxed. This graph taken from Oregon State University shows a classic supply and demand curve of a market in equilibrium. Markets in equilibrium display the following characteristics. All mutually beneficial trades take place. All buyers that have a value for the resource that are greater than the price will buy, and all sellers that can produce goods at a cost less than the going market price will be able to sell. Thus, economic output is maximized, and resources are allocated in the best possible fashion. As I mentioned, any buyer that has a value for this particular resource that is greater than the market price will be able to buy the good and thus experience what's known as consumer surplus. The same would be true for sellers. Overall, this economy and market is very efficient and resources are allocated in the best way possible, which is ultimately the goal of economics. Now compare this graph to this graph taken from Alex Tabrock and Tyler Cohen's book, Modern Principles of Economics, shows exactly what a tax does. It essentially, as they mentioned, drives a wedge in between the market. Thus, the equilibrium in this market would normally be point A. However, a tax disrupts this equilibrium and thus lowers the amount that sellers are able to produce. Sellers are not able to get as much money for their goods, buyers are not able to buy as many of these goods, and thus everybody is worse off. Without the presence of this tax shown in the yellow line, buyers between the line point B and A would buy, and sellers between the point D and A would sell the good. That is because both those buyers and sellers are able to produce or buy the good when they have a value greater than the market price or a cost of production lower than the market price. However, the tax prevents these mutually beneficial trades from occurring. Now, it might be easy to think, well, that value of money is just being transferred to the government, but that is not the truth. In fact, the government only gets $1 off the sale of each apple. So, in fact, the government is only getting the essentially square value here. That triangular shape was known as deadweight loss, and nobody gets it. Consumers, producers, or the government, neither group gets it. Thus, the total level of economic output declines from 700 apples to 500 apples. There is a triangle that normally would either go to consumer surplus or producer surplus, but instead it's lost to mere deadweight loss. In this sense, it's obvious that taxes create deadweight loss. This creates a wasteful allocation of resources, and while it's understandable why the government imposes taxes in order to raise revenue, it is worth noting and should be considered before the usage of taxes to consider the amount of deadweight loss that a tax can cause. Ultimately, economists are concerned with maximizing economic output, which taxes do quite the opposite of doing.